So quick question, you can put this in the chat. Why are you here? What has brought you to this presentation? What do you want to hope to learn from this? And so put those in there. And as Karen said, put questions. If you have actual questions, put those in the Q&A. But you can put in the chat, like, why are you here? What are you looking for? And as we go through this presentation, what I like to remind people of is to think about one thing that you would be able to share with somebody else. What's something that you want to share? And make a note of that. Other thing you can do is make a note of one thing that you want to implement or several things that you want to implement. And then at the end, star just one that you're going to implement with that. And always LinkedIn or my email or anything else, please connect with me. And I would love to follow up with you if you want any follow-up and answer more questions. So we're talking about numbers and reporting. So add this into the chat. What does your boss currently ask you to do? Or does anybody ask you? Do they ask for numbers of volunteers? Where in the organization they're helping? Is it impact they make, impact on the staff, impact on volunteers themselves? Or maybe you've never been asked to do a report. What is it? So if you can put that in the chat, then we're going to talk more about maybe what they should be asking you. So what are things that that you are asked for in your report? So why even bother with a report? If nobody asks you, or even if they do, why bother making it more than just, oh, the total number of hours for last year was? So a report can be something that can help protect our jobs. As we learned in COVID, there were too many of us in our field that were let go because leadership didn't think that it was valuable because volunteers weren't there. They didn't see the long-term effect that would happen if there's not a leader of volunteers. Those volunteers, they all disappeared, most likely, oftentimes. And so we need to show the value of who we are and what we do in our job. And not the value of who we are as a person, because I think we know we're very valuable, but we need to share what our role does for the organization. We need to share the stories. So stories of clients, story of the impact, story of volunteers themselves and how they're impacted in some way for good. We need to show stats because numbers are numbers, and numbers can lie and numbers can be manipulated, but numbers done well can also show a very strong story. And so grants need numbers. We can't get away from numbers. And so they are very important, and we need to do the right ones in the right way. But we do need to show that. And it helps show us, reports help show why we need to have volunteers. Why do we need to have volunteers? We think we say that, and we think that, but we need to be able to show and prove that. So it's almost like proving the worth of having volunteers and us. So is there anything that I think I missed? You can add that into the chat box as well. And Karen will keep track of those. So how often do you do a report, or should you do a report? It really kind of varies. So you can talk to your boss or the board or whomever you report to, and it could be like a quick monthly, like this month this happened, or you could do quarterly, you could do annually, you could do some variation of all of those things. So find out what works for you and what works best for your leadership. It might be that you have like one-off events that you wouldn't know of if you did it like, just once a month or once a year, like those kinds of things. So just figure out the cadence that works best for you. So who should see this report of volunteers? It should be your direct supervisor for sure, the director, maybe it's the board. Each organization's a little different, but I would get that report into as many people's hands as possible. Feel free to share this with everybody. Maybe it's your fundraising team, maybe it's your communication teams, maybe it's marketing. It's the volunteers themselves so they can see the impact that they're making. All of this is so important to share it with all of your stakeholders. So don't just hold this report to yourself. So lessons that I've learned on doing reporting, and I don't like numbers right up front. So I just had to learn how to just start. I had to do something. And so the first time, my first report, basically an Excel spreadsheet that I just did. And it was just all numbers. Like, here's the total number of hours. This is the total number of volunteers. And it was pretty simple, but it was my first report. So you just have to start somewhere. And then the next report, that's when I started being like, well, maybe I should add some photos. Maybe I should add some quotes. What's the impact volunteers are starting to make? And then I tried to start figuring out other things that would strengthen this report. You can add quotes from clients, donors, volunteers, staff. In 2024, I'm going to show you an example. I'll show you my report that I ended up doing in 2024. I included surveys, and Better Impact is really awesome because now you can do surveys within Better Impact. And I love it. It's so easy that way because then you can get feedback and it's all within Better Impact and they just log into Better Impact. There's other systems that I was using that then they were like, oh, you have to pay if you want 100 of these responses back. And I didn't know that. So anyway, it makes it great. But maybe you get surveys from recipients, clients, donors. Be creative and get surveys and answers from a lot of different people. So who creates this report? It's going to be you, of course. So you can get help. If you're not as numbers person, recruit. And that's something that I did is I found I was asking around to volunteers and I said, I found somebody who's really good with numbers. And they said, could you help me? And she was more than happy to help me create like an Excel spreadsheet for an ROI where all I had to do was plug in the numbers. The formulas were already in there. And she loved it. She loved using that skill set from her fairly newly retired role. So what do you include? I think of it now as a 360 review. You want to look at all the different aspects of volunteer engagement. So yes, there's numbers, but what's the impact on the mission? What's getting done more of now that you didn't do or couldn't do without volunteers? What's the impact on the staff? Are they less stressed? Can they do more? Can they do other things that are more mission critical when volunteers are doing other tasks? Photos, pictures, videos, all of that visual kinds of piece of this, it's going to show what's happening. You can see then what's actually happening. And then again, quotes. Get quotes and just have a folder where you just start piling those up throughout the year. And whether it's on a piece of paper or a digital folder, whatever it is, but just keep those quotes, whether it's quotes from volunteers, from staff, from, again, your clients or those that are being served from your mission.
Hello, we had a quick question. Is that looking to how do you track the impact even per program? Do you look at doing the impact overall, or do you want to split it down by program? And if so, what's kind of the best ways to separate that out?
That's a great question. And I think each organization is going to be a little different depending on the mission and your programs that you have. If you can delineate it down by program, I think that'd be great. But others are going to be a little more challenging as far as impact, as far as like delineating, so if you're trying to think of an example, like at the blood bank, we have volunteers that serve the snacks and drinks. And so they see every single donor coming through and serve them snacks and drinks and donor in the blood bank world is the blood donor. And so, and I do plug giving blood. So we never have enough, no matter where you live, please give blood. And so with that though that particular section of volunteerism, they are definitely impacting the donor in that way. And I did do a survey of our donors for those volunteers in that particular category of being a cafe volunteer. Another impact that I can do that's a little separate from that would be t-shirts. So as an incentive, we give t-shirts. So the impact that a volunteer makes by packing and repacking and boxing up t-shirts is a very different impact than what they're doing in the cafe. So if you can break that up, by all means, I think that is fabulous. So if you can, but again, you may not be able to do that quite as cleanly and distinctly, but if just to start somewhere, just make an impact, again, don't make it too complicated the very first time. Mm-hmm. Just do the simplest thing you can right now and then you can make it more complex later if you need to. But just start with something and make it simple, make it attainable, and something you can actually do this year.
And that's what I totally coach our clients on is, you can do feedback fields, getting that data at the end of the shift. Don't ask the volunteer 15 questions when they just want to log out and go home.
Right.
But keep it simple. As you said, how many boxes were packed? How many things were done? Is there any impactful story you want to share? 1 or 2 questions. Keep it simple so people actually want to answer it. And then that data, oh my goodness, that data can help you so much.
Really can. Yep. It's so important. And you'll see that too as we go through some places that I've put that. So why more than numbers? So numbers, like I said, statistics and numbers can be manipulated. And so we hope that we aren't manipulating them in a bad way. We want to make it truthful, right? But it is a deceiving point. And I do remember this from Tony Goodrow when I was first hearing him talk about numbers. And he said, numbers themselves aren't showing the true impact. And I loved his example. So if you have last year, 100 hours were spent planting trees, and the next year, 50 hours were spent planting trees, which one was actually a better return on investment? Well, the question is, how many trees were planted? So if it was the same amount of trees, they were actually better on the year 2 with less hours and more in the same amount of trees planted. So hours themselves don't equal impact. And so I think it's why we need to throw in other aspects of numbers. So it's only one facet, an important facet, but only one facet. So anything else that you put into your report should always tie back to your mission. Sure, you could have had volunteers do X, Y, Z, but how does that relate back to your mission? How is that impacting your community? How is that making a difference? So showing and telling what's being done that wouldn't have otherwise been done. Maybe it's the actual impact. We had 20 more meals served this week that we wouldn't have otherwise, or so many more coats that were gathered, or whatever it is. The visual aspect. Now, of course, you have to be careful with taking photos of your clients or recipients, whoever it is, making sure that you're not taking advantage of them in whatever space they're in, and making sure that you're getting everybody's signatures and it's okay. But taking some kind of photos or videos can be really impactful as well, done in the right way. So if you don't have time for that, recruit a volunteer. So find a volunteer who likes those things, and then give them the specific specifications of who and what and where and how to get signatures and all of those things, so that they have the right instructions to be able to capture those things for you. So you hate numbers. So in the chat, Karen, you can put this, let me know in a few minutes or a couple minutes, like where everybody's at. But which one are you? Are you number 1? I'm not, like, no, not a numbers person. That would be me. And 2, you're like Karen and you like numbers. So which one are you? And you can give me a shout out, like how many more of what we're getting.
Oh, we're getting a good mix. I think a little bit more on the 2.
Okay, good.
But I know it's this mix of people like, give me all of the numbers, and people like, give me people over numbers, give me like this. I think all of us love a story. We love that impact and that story. But unfortunately, data equals dollars. Is that whenever the people that are making our funding decision, they often need those hard numbers and data.
Yep.
And so it's that, but a lot of us didn't get into volunteer management to do math.
Right, exactly right. So if you're not a numbers person, find a volunteer to help you. Like I said, the person that I found loved doing spreadsheets, return on investment. That's the ROI, stands for return on investment. And that's been great. And maybe there's somebody at your organization that likes numbers. Is it the fundraising person, your accounting person? I don't know, ask around. Maybe you have friends, family, I don't know, somebody that can help you. And so a CRM, it's really, the CRM is a program. I use Better Impact. Thanks to Better Impact, I used it in my other organization, and then I brought it to where I am now. And it's just been wonderful to work with. But you need something other than Excel, really. Even if you're small, Excel is going to still limit you. So you need a place, a software system of some sort that's going to be able to help you stay organized, streamlined. It's going to save you time and money. And then the input, and of course, data in is what you're going to get out. So junk in is junk out. So it has to be good data that you're putting in the system. But once you put good data in the system, you're going to be able to pull out good reports. So it's really important to have something that you can actually use. So what numbers? Annually, excuse me, total hours for the year, definitely that's important. Total number of volunteers, sure, that's important too, gives you some kind of baseline. And then bonus points if you can find a volunteer, again, if you're not into Excel and the graphs, but find somebody who can put a graph and compare year to year to year to year to year, because then you're going to start seeing trends. And Better Impact has some of those already put into the system. And if in whatever system you use, it might too. But if not, you can always export all of this information and manipulate it to whatever you want. And again, I have volunteers, thank goodness, who love doing this for me, and it's fabulous. Volunteers, hours, impact per area. So, talking about, like at the blood bank, we have the cafe, we have the shirt packing, we have mobile drives, we have different things. So by area, sifting out like how many volunteers and how many hours you have per area can be interesting too. Full-time equivalent. So with that one, how much is and this is, again, it's a rough estimate, but in general, how many full-time staff do your volunteers equal? Excuse me. And so you're going to take your volunteer hours and divide it by the number of hours that one full-time staff would be spending working in a year. And you can take out vacation, sure. Instead of 52, maybe it's 50 weeks that you work and, put in there, whatever. But that's how you figure that out. And then the independent sector, I think most of us, unless you're new, if you're new and don't know, but independent sector, and I have the website there, is going to be the place to go for an average. They do go by state, where they can do a national average of the quote value of volunteer hours. And it gives you a monetary account, gives you some ballpark. Again, these are all kind of ballparks to work with. So apologize, I'm getting over bronchitis or RSV or something anyway. So thanks for your patience. But things that you want to keep track of, what's the impact? How in your community, so these are all different sections or ways that you can show your impact. How has your community changed because of the volunteer engagement? What more meaning is in there for the community with your organization? How's your mission being seen or heard more? Is there something that's being resolved more quickly or in a bigger way, some issue that's being solved? Is there a strong relationship between the community and your organization and the mission? And is there a better understanding in the community for what you're doing? Dollars donated. Of course, we all need dollars, to, or whatever your currency is. We all need money to be paying our bills, and we do all have bills. And so what kind of financial donations are volunteers giving? What kind of in-kind donations? What kind of capacity building are they giving you that you can now spend dollars on something else rather than, lights? If they give you like blankets, then that was like that much dollars that you didn't have to pay for blankets that now you can pay for something else. Impact on staff. And this is something you just might have to ask the staff. What impact has this had on you? And I love it when staff will just respond back to me and say, oh my gosh, this volunteer helped so much because they helped this go better, blah, 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 blah. And so that's really important to ask the staff. And after you keep asking them those kinds of things, maybe they'll just start sharing those with you. But it's allowing staff to do more critical mission things. Again, maybe it's less stressful now because they don't have to worry about this and this at the same time. You can gain new ideas from the volunteers. And again, the dollar capacity is added with a volunteer assisting. Impact on volunteers. What's the impact on volunteers? Volunteers are part of your community. So what's the impact on volunteers? I know it warms my heart when volunteers are like, this just gives me meaning. It gives me purpose. It gets me out of the day, out for the day. And it just is just wonderful because that person's life is just better because they're there volunteering. It's keeping them mentally, physically more alert and better. And that's better for them. It's better for us. And it's better for the community, quite honestly, because they're going to be healthier and need less healthcare later, hopefully, in that way. You're creating a community of care and belonging and connection. And I feel like in this world, we need connection all the more than we ever have before. And so creating that connection, that belonging is so important. And it's allowing them to share their talents and skills. Again, even giving them meaning and purpose. And then, of course, I think it's sort of the obvious thing we think of is the impact on the recipients. So how do they feel? How's it helping them? What supplies do they have now that they didn't before? What skill set do they have now that they didn't have before? How are their dreams being realized? So quantify what you can, but some of those things are challenging to quantify. Reading to a child, maybe it's not one of those things where like reading to the child over 1 year shows a great impact, and yet it will have made a big impact because that child will have heard, seen, and heard books, stories, imagination, and it makes a big impact. So thinking about what is it the impact that you are making and what would happen if you didn't do that. So non-numbers, photos, again, take photos, videos. If you forget, ask the volunteers to send you some. And again, make sure it's in the right setting, the right place, the right people, all of those things, and make sure that there's permissions in place. Quotes again from staff, volunteers, recipients. Again, surveys can be really helpful too, and I'll show one of the things that I did. So I want you to encourage you to dream your future, because part of your report at the very end should include, or somewhere should include, what you could do more of if you had XYZ. So block an hour sometime. I challenge you this week, next week, and message me on LinkedIn and tell me if you did it. And I'd love to hear what happened. So block it out and make a list of all the things you're like, oh my gosh, I think we could do this, this, and this if we had that, that, and that. And use that time too to organize and create your own plan and how you're going to make this impact and how you're going to do your report. So make that organization and creation of your report. So use the things you do know. You don't have to go crazy here. If you've never done one, just again, start somewhere. If you know Word, put it in Word. If you know Excel, put it in Excel. If you know Canva, which I've become a great fan of, that's great. But if not, whatever it is that you know, put it in there. And then again, you can have volunteers help you, and you can have volunteers review it because they might think of things that you didn't even think of. So that's important too. So create your plan. What numbers do you want to track? Because you need to know what to track so that by the end of the year, you'll have them tracked. You need to know who and how you're going to collect stories. I found a volunteer who is actually an engineer by trade, but he, it turns out, is really, really good at talking with people. So I have him talk to a newer volunteer and he gets their story. Why did you come? What do you do? Et cetera, et cetera. He writes me up like a 2 to 3 paragraph summary. It's absolutely phenomenal. I think he lost his calling in engineering with writing because now he's writing, and it's just so beautiful. So I have all of these summaries that I can share with other volunteers to get to know each other, as well as including things in a summary in the chart in my report, which is great. So find others to help you. And then who in your departments have information you're needing. So be sure to ask out for that too. Excuse me. So this is what my report looks like. And so this was from 2024. So again, I added photos to this, but again, yours doesn't have to look like this. Just start somewhere. This has been a 4 or 5 year process. So just be okay with that. But I started tying everything back to the main objectives. So that first column is growing the donor base, giving excellent donor experience, et cetera, et cetera. So what is the mission and the main objectives of your organization right now and for that year and for, upcoming year? And then what the volunteers accomplished and tying that back to the objectives. And then the snapshot, I wanted to throw some numbers on there just because those grab certain people's attention. And so impact, 160 blood donor appointments were booked at community events. That's 160 donors that may or may not have actually booked an appointment if we weren't in the community. And then the second one is the 100% of our donors gave 5 of 5 star rating to our cafe volunteers. That was my survey. I did a survey in the cafe and I asked the donors to fill it out. And I think I'm pretty sure the volunteers were pretty honest and didn't pull out the bad reviews when we did that. But I got those, and it was just wonderful to be able to tell the volunteers, thank you for doing such an amazing job, because it was 100% of 5-star rating for the volunteers. That means a lot. And the return on investment, the 827% return on investment, that's absolutely phenomenally huge. When you talk to anybody about a quote normal return on investment, that's beyond. And so that caught a couple people's eye. And then how many volunteers were involved in the year. So I just wanted that front page to show pictures of the variety of volunteers that we have, the roles that they were doing, and then just a summary. So if that's all somebody saw, at least they saw that we're going back to the objectives, or going back to the mission. Then I started getting into some charts and numbers. So the value, of course, dollars talk. And so what's the value? And then again, year to year to year, you can kind of see what's been going on, with the number of hours and the value and things like that. Return on investment, started tracking that in 2023. So again, that gives you a trend once you start doing that.
And Angela, I'm just going to pause you for a second for some questions, if you don't mind. If you want to go back there. We've got one about the data, and then one just a little bit more of a general question. So we'll do the data one first, because you're just still in the thick of it. How did you calculate the 827% ROI?
I asked the volunteer. So the return on investment, what you have to do is put in all of the costs. So it was like my salary, my benefits, and our HR does give us as an employee, it's like, this is your salary, but this is what the company, my organization, also is giving me as a benefit, which is like the health insurance and all those other things that they help pay for, matching retirement. So there's that number too. So you put all that in there. You put in all of the costs of anything that you buy for the volunteers, any costs that that's related to volunteers, whether it's thank you items and, copying and the whatever, all those things. So that's going to be your cost. And so you have that in there. And then return on investment. I was able, because at the blood bank, we can actually figure out based on the roles, we went to the value then of the volunteer time. So that we invested X amount of dollars, and then we got X amount of dollars out of it. So we invested whatever it was in 2024, and we got, let me go back to the slide. And then we got this $759,921 back. So you divide those out, and then you get your percent of a return on investment. And if you want more, just message me.
And the other question, just to kind of do a little bit, is that one of our attendees, Tammy says, thank you very much for the answer. That helps a lot. This attendee's previous role ended due to funding, but also due to the organization not seeing the benefit of the role financially. I don't think volunteering can equate monetary value, and I'm just wondering any thoughts or advice about, it's always a tricky thing about volunteering equating financial value and how that whole works. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is really tricky. And I hate to say it, but it's going to come down to showing the value. Again, you got to show the impact. And sometimes all people want are dollars. How much what'd you give me? What did you contribute to the organization? And that's unfortunately where the mindset is. And that's where over time we all have to just keep showing the impact and keep showing those things. So I am not equating like the volunteer impact to the 759,000. They're beyond that. I mean, we all know that. So it is a tricky balancing act to play in this. And that's why reporting, that's why showing the impact so much more can be better than just showing numbers and getting stories in there. But it is important. And I think it is going to be important for us to keep doing numbers, because with funding being short and with, those kinds of challenging things of society or whatever, that we all just need to, there's going to have to be a piece that I think we have to defend ourselves with and say, if you don't have me and you don't have the volunteers, you're going to lose this. And so maybe it's more of what you lose more than what, and it's certainly, and I've heard other people talk about this, it's not what you save. Volunteers don't save you money because you haven't spent the money. And there was a whole nother talk about that in the Alive conference back in October. And so I think it was. And so that's, definitely it's volunteers don't quote save you money, but I think what a good way to frame it is that volunteers are increasing your capacity and they're increasing that cushion of not having to spend the money on staff, on the things that volunteers are doing. They're increasing that capacity to do more impact than saving money. Because as we all know, and I will say till I'm blue in the face, volunteers aren't free. And I think we all know that. Volunteers are not free. Volunteers
they don't save you money, yeah. They make your money, you make your budget go further.
Correct.
They're not reducing your budget, they're bringing more to your current budget.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And one question, do you have a suggestion on balancing the ROI or comparable in a unionized environment? Oh, that is an interesting conversation, because especially in unionized environments, volunteers cannot replace staff. So it is it is that tricky balance of staff equivalent, but without actually replace. Oh, Bridget, that is a can of worms topic. And Bridget has her healthcare. I've got my healthcare background. Oh, I notice people raising their hands. Your best bet is to pop into chat, because everybody is auto muted and we cannot unmute. So if you've got a comment, I do not want to lose you, but making sure that you just pop your comment in the chat, because we can't unmute you. But yes, unionized and staff replacement.
Yeah, so volunteers should never, union or not union, should never replace staff ever in any organization, right? That's not the goal or the role of volunteers. And so if a staff person, senior, whatever, come to you and say, well, we need volunteers to do this because that person got fired or this spot's let go or whatever, it's like, maybe a piece of it, just like as if they were there, but they can't do all of it, because you can't replace staff with volunteers. And in union, I have not worked in any union environment, so I won't have experienced advice to tell you on that one. I would say ask others, because I won't have, that's what I would have to do, is I'm going to have to find other people that are in a union situation to be able to do that. But I do know that it can be challenging, and you do have to walk some pretty strict lines. And so to just be careful and be educated from the union people and from legal, like what you can and can't do. So just be really be educated in that regard. So yeah, it's good. And that is tricky. Something that I wanted to show, this was impact. I wanted to show some outcomes, I called it. So these were projects that volunteers were working on, details that they did, and what was the outcome. So what happened? Like a new center opened, and I recruited a new lead volunteer who then saved me time and money, because then they were going to lead the volunteers in that center. The giveaways, thousands of shirts, which are incentives to get donors to come in to give blood. And donors love incentives. Who doesn't love a free giveaway? And so by the volunteer doing that, it freed up staff to be able to be doing other things other than sorting boxes and t-shirts. And they were able to be doing other marketing kinds of things that were at a higher level. And I say that knowing that volunteers can also do higher level things. We can have very variable skill sets. So volunteers can help at all levels. And I just want to make that clear to you that volunteers have extremely interesting and valuable skill sets all the way. And every single one is valuable. Another one is like the ROI Excel sheet. This volunteer helped me with that. They did shredding. They shredded like 70 or 80 humongous boxes of things that needed to be shredded. And they loved it. They came in, it was their Zen time. They just sat there and shredded. But it saved the organization tons of money because they didn't have to, have some company do it. So again, just highlighting what volunteers have done. They increased the donor numbers and they grew the community awareness and gave a little summary. Again, I tapped the numbers in with summaries to do that. Again, a little chart, again, to show that. So this was the donor survey that we did on the bottom there, and just showing how volunteers were making such a big difference and they were doing a great job of giving great donor experience. And then these are quotes. And so this was increasing the staff capacity and they're being less stressed and talked about. And I showed quotes then from staff so that they could see like what made really a big difference in their lives. It frees us up to focus on donors and the draw. The blood emergency appeal, no donors left center due to hardworking, amazing 5-star staff and the best volunteers ever. All caps. And this is from the staff. And so this just means so much. So the volunteer impact. So what happened there? Volunteers helped with all of these different things, educating, helping staff, helping donors, all those kinds of things. And then I showed what the roles, where they are in the organization. They're in every single department now. They've helped in some way, shape, or form from when I first started. So I'm really excited to show that, so show those things that you're really excited. Like this year we expanded into whatever. And what volunteers are doing in the community. They're serving a positive influence, those kinds of things. So then this was 2024. So for 2025, I wrote in there things that I would want that would help me increase the impact that we could do. And then I just did I don't know that anybody looked, but I put in trends. By the end of the page, I'm sure nobody read all this at the end of the report, but trends of volunteering and then compared to some of my sister organizations. So, excuse me, this is me. And I am happy to have more discussions now. But the QR code will take you to my website. You can go on my email, LinkedIn. Please contact me. I would love to chat more about numbers, resources, reports, all those kind of things, because it's something that I've over time just kind of struggled through and, want to help others because this isn't my forte, but I've learned and I'd love to be able to help others.